Alright, welcome back everyone. Dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. We are in the final hours of the year 2024. There's a lot to look back at, and of course, there's a lot to look forward to. And in order to make sense out of things, kasama po natin ulit, of course, ito sa mga ating mga favorite, obviously more favorite kay Sir Ronald Llamas. Napahamak po tayo ni Sir Ronald Llamas. I don't know, Justice Carpio, if you saw, there was a new piece. Nasabi daw nila, mga toxic macho podcaster daw kami ni Christian Esguerra at si Ronald Llamas. So, dinamay pa si Leloy. So, apparently we are in the radar of many people for better or for worse. Justice Carpio, parang hindi ikaw na-mention. I wonder why. Is it because Justice napakabait niyo and politically correct? Kamusta, Justice?
I'm okay. We have a lot to talk today.
I know, unfortunately, a lot to talk about in a sense na hindi masyadong masaya siguro. I mean, just to give the lay of the land of what we want to discuss. So, I'll use both the Philippine pesos and dollars. So, eto guys, nagkaroon tayo ng 10% increase sa budget spending natin for next year sa buhay at a record 6.33 trillion pesos, which is equal to $100.9 billion. That's almost a quarter of our gross domestic product. Now, this was much higher than a projection of 6.18 trillion pesos announced earlier in the month. And the revenue was forecast at 4.64 trillion pesos and the budget deficit at 5.3% of GDP. So basically, sarap buhay. Medyo sarap buhay. The budget for the Department of Education, we'll discuss this more, was pegged at 1.053 trillion pesos and 1.034 trillion naman for public works and highways. At the same time, pagdating naman, and I think this will come in when we discuss West Philippine Sea later on, Justice Secretary, instead of 50 billion pesos, so around $1 billion, actually less than one, around 900 million pesos for AFP modernization, 35 billion pesos lang binigay. That's a 30% reduction from the proposed budget that we're looking at. So, in fairness naman to BBM, medyo he took his time and there may mga kinaltasan dyan around 3.35 billion pesos or around 195, sorry, dollars, around 195 billion pesos yung kinaltasan na veto ni President Marcos Jr. But nevertheless, there are so many controversial things as far as this budget is concerned. And medyo last minute talaga 11th hour before the end of the year na pasa ito. So Justice Carpio, can we talk about first of all, ano yung mga general impression nyo dito sa the budget drama and the final version of the budget that we're seeing right now?
Well, we had two objections, no, main objections to the 2025 budget as approved by the BICAM and Congress. Basically, the budget of education was less than the budget of DPWH, and this violated the constitutional provision that the education shall have the highest budgetary priority. But with the veto of the president of certain items in the DPWH budget, they just increased. In effect, they decreased the budget of DPWH just a little below the budget of
Para number
Department of
one yung
Education.
para number one in DepEd, so they technically
Yes.
they played around
Yeah.
it. Okay.
So DepEd, per my calculation now, is higher by about 20 to 26 billion pesos, and they corrected the constitutional infirmity by slashing the budget of DPWH to what is required to make the DPWH budget, to make the DepEd budget just a little bit higher. So they've complied actually with the letter of the Constitution. But of course, that did not restore the budget for the computerization, because when you delete, when you veto items in the budget, that's lost. That amount is lost. You cannot transfer that to other items. So while the DPWH budget went down, the DepEd budget remained the same, but now a little bit higher than DPWH. That's the effect. Now on PhilHealth, they didn't, of course, add anything because they could not add. So PhilHealth still has a zero budget in the seven in the 2025 General Appropriations Act, and we will question this uh, before the Supreme Court because the effect is they're not following the provision of the Constitution that health should be given priority. If you give it zero, then it has no priority at all. I mean, you're down at the bottom of the ladder. You're not even part of the agencies that got the any funding. So, and there's also another thing here because under the Internal Revenue Code, the government must automatically remit directly to PhilHealth the share of PhilHealth in the sin taxes. And that's quite a lot. I think that's almost 50 billion pesos.
Pesos, yes.
And they're not transferring it because that was part of the budget of PhilHealth under the original proposal of the president, the proposal that is submitted to Congress in the National Expenditure Program. So they are violating that because the GAA cannot amend an existing law, and they're amending the Internal Revenue Code, which says X% of the sin taxes should go to PhilHealth. So we will have to question this particular provision,
Right.
which gave PhilHealth zero budget,
Oh,
and that will be the main thrust of our petition.
just as a little bit of rewind from the PhilHealth one, because that's a gaping hole, no, that's a black hole. Just going back to the issue of constitutional, essentially requirements regarding the DepEd budget. So are we saying here that they followed the letter of the law but not the spirit of the law? Kasi parang they just, sh- they just a little bit shuffled the budget of the other side just so that DepEd is higher, right? And then I want to also ask, given how inefficient Sarah was, napaka-inefficient niya. Well, we know saan siya efficient. We can have a whole Mary Grace Piatos discussion on that. But where she was very inefficient was spending the budget allocated to her, 'di ba? Napakababa yung investment rate ng DepEd, no? Dun sa mga pangangailangan ng DepEd. Um Given that history, did it make sense for DepEd's budget to be significantly increased at all? Is the current budget allocation reasonable? Kasi ang tinitingnan ko rin dito, absorption capacity. Baka naman talaga meron tayong absorption capacity. Or are we saying dahil hindi na si Sara ang presidente at someone like Sonny Angara, who is more of a finance numbers guy, at least compared to Sara, perhaps the DepEd deserved more than that, and all they had to do was just to follow the letter of the law, but undermine the spirit of the law in terms of supporting DepEd as the most important department of the government.
Well, I think if the issue is brought to the Supreme Court, it will be very difficult to say that uh, the the priority that should be given to the highest priority that should be given to DepEd has been violated because in terms of numbers, the DepEd now has the highest budgetary allocation. But the what is wrong with the action of Congress in not giving any budgetary allocation to DepEd for computerization because the former DepEd secretary did not utilize her budget for this. I mean, why punish the students? Why punish the students for the fault or inefficiency of
Attitude,
the
yeah.
previous DepEd secretary? I mean,
And you
that's
have
the
a new one,
wrong.
right? Justice, I mean, you have a new one in Sonny Angara who
Yeah,
comes from the Congress and Senate. I mean, he's one
yeah.
of them. I mean, why did they do this to him?
Not only to him but to the students. I mean, to because we are already falling behind in terms of educating our youth. We're probably in the bottom of the list in Asia now or in the world.
Oh, in the world, kasi more than
Yes,
90% yung literacy deficiency natin based on World Bank. That's Congo level. I mean, no offense. That's
yes,
sub-Saharan level. Yeah.
yeah. So they should provide computers because that's the way you learn now. but they punish the students. I don't think they, the department secretary is not being punished because he's already completed his education, but the youth will not be able to complete their education because they don't have the computers. So they are really punishing the students, not the department officials.
Just to be clear, this Justice, maybe I know more about the US, more know about the US than the Philippines. But in the US kasi malakas yung mga teachers union and all, 'di ba? Um, of course there are certain restrictions on unionization in certain critical sectors. But alam ko in the US, for instance, very strong lobby yung teachers unions, right? Or teachers organization. Wala pa tayong ganito sa Pilipinas kasi we're talking about a million people, right? More or less working with the DepEd at different levels, including a lot of public school teachers. So shouldn't they make noise? Shouldn't they mobilize? What is the legality, constitutionality around that in the Philippine context?
Well, of course, the Parents Teachers Association should be complaining, no? But there's another angle here, Richard, because a report just came out that the Special Education Fund, the SEF, that's part of our, whenever we pay our real estate tax, there's a portion there that goes to the Special Education Fund. That's supposed to buy to improve the classroom and the equipment of schools, public schools in that town, in that city or municipality. But it turns out that this fund have accumulated, and they're not being utilized fully per the latest COA report. So, uh, I mean, we should find a way to convince and to prod and to pressure the local school boards to use these funds, because these funds can be used to build the classrooms,
Yeah,
to
infrastructure.
improve the teaching materials in the classroom, even computers. So I don't know why uh, we have unutilized funds. Uh, the, you have towns there like Muntinlupa, like uh, Quezon City. They have funds. When we pay a real estate taxes, a part of that goes to the special education fund. That's supposed to improve the teaching facilities in that area, in the public schools in that area. So uh, the funds are just lying there, idle. So I think it's a crime
Ano
to
ba yung
maintain
dahilan
that.
na Justice? Because uh, obviously the pedestrian understanding of fiscal issue is nakawan lang yan, unahan lang yan, ganyan yan. But how can we help people understand itong underutilization, underspending phenomenon? Is this an institutional absorption capacity issue? Is this just generalized incompetence by LGUs and some of the government units to make use of the money that was allocated to them? May pagkakulang ba in terms of the legislators making sure that the money they give can be absorbed properly and implemented, na kumbaga tumutugma yung batas at yung mga allocations doon sa mga katotohanan on the ground? What is your read on that, Justice Carpio? What is
Well,
this understanding?
a group of my friends were trying to examine this because the money is there, the need for the money is there, but they're not spending it. So we are trying to understand this phenomenon, and we have agreed that we'll look into this and propose solutions, because this is a waste of resources. The money is there to build classrooms, and yet we lack classrooms. So uh, I think we have to look into this, and I'm asking my friends to look into this, and we're looking into this.
Well, I mean, going back to this, obviously, you were in the Supreme Court when you made a decision on this issue. Yung disbursement acceleration program, the whole DAP during the Pinoy Times logic or rationale supposedly was that ito yung paraan kung saan ang executive branch can help to plug in underspending when clearly hindi tumutugma yung gusto ng legislatura at saka yung kakayahanan ng mga government officials on the ground. Now, obviously, I understand you struck it down because you saw it as a usurpation of the power of the purse of the Congress. I understand that, but don't we need something along the lines of a DAP that does not usurp the constitutional mandate of the Congress? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, can we have a kind of a better version of a DAP? Is that something we can look at here?
Well, we in the PDAF and DAP, the basis there is that Congress should appropriate and the executive will implement. I mean, Congress cannot tell the executive how to implement. That's the function of the executive. And what happened there was that the Congress passed a law saying that they can recommend where the funds will go. I mean, that's not allowed. That's implementation already. So we struck it down, and also the Congress created a lump sum. Uh, they will, let's say, appropriate 100 billion for various projects. That cannot be done because you have to put there the purpose. You cannot just say this fund will be used for any purpose that the executive wants. No, it has to be for a specific purpose. Uh, so those were the grounds for invalidating the acts of Congress. Uh, but now I haven't looked at the present GA, but I'm hearing that there is an item there for various infrastructure projects. I think that is susceptible to constitutional challenge because that's a lump sum. Because you can put that in rock netting in uh, uh, reflectorized cat's eye and so on. And the purpose is that of the Constitution is that when you appropriate, you must put there the purpose of the appropriation because that's the role of Congress. And then to implement that will be the executive. There's a check and balance.
So, could there be a certain degree of discretion in terms of like the general purposes by the Congress, but in terms of particularity and realities on the ground? I know I'm a little bit pushing the boundaries here, but I'm just trying to understand how can we get out of this deadlock eh? Because matagal na natin itong problema ng hindi lang corruption eh, but the underspending. Eh. It's like
Well,
a twin evils, right? This is a
well,
twin evil.
it's not really a deadlock, Richard, because the Congress can easily itemize the allocation of 1 billion, X percent, let's say, to uh, school buildings, X percent to uh, computer equipment, and so on. They can itemize it, but they prefer to have a lump sum, uh, so they can uh, have more flexibility to give it to soft projects.
Can we spell it out a little bit more? Just it's like I think I think nagigets ng tao yung nangyayari dito sa conversation. Like,
Well,
can we spell it out a bit? Yeah.
they want flood control projects because you cannot monitor it, and because unfortunately for them, the floods arrived and the flood control projects didn't work, but and then they want rock netting. I mean, they want to put nets on to prevent landslides, and they also want this reflectorized cat's eye all over our highways. It looks like that those are the soft projects that
Sino
I'm
bang mga
saying.
ano, sino bang mga kumpanya diyan na like you can connect the dots like I see where this is going. I see it where it is going. I mean, ang una-una natin kailangan, Justice Carpio, di ba? Kailangan natin i-audit what happened with billions of dollars we spend on flood control, which obviously didn't work, right? Like something is going on. Someone is not auditing the quality. Mukhang ano na to eh, medyo leakage yan nangyari dyan, no?
Well, that's a problem. That's why we well we have to create different checking mechanisms for all of this, uh, and I've been suggesting that uh, the contractor should give a guarantee, a warranty, how long that dam will last. or how long that road will be free of potholes. Will so you win the bid not only if you are the lowest bidder, but also if you provide the longest warranty. And you have to put up a bond in case you breach your warranty, you do not comply with your warranty, and normally the bond will come from the GSIS, and the GSIS will require you to put up hard collateral like your house. So right now they build the road. If the rains come, the roads are washed away, and nobody and everybody forgets about the liability of the contractor. So
They
we
have to have
do.
skin in the game. They have to have skin in the game. There has to be some culpability.
Yes.
At least financially, if not worse, right? Kasi hindi pwede, di ganon kung sinong bara-bara na lang pwede gumawa. Basta mura lang, di ba? Baka tayong dalawa, pwede tayong mag-contractor, di ba? Justice Carpio, basta, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous, right? This is a serious matter. Billions, billions ang ginastos dito over the past few years lang on this fraud control, which clearly didn't work. So something is going on.
Yeah,
Something is going on.
they tried to correct it by saying now it's no longer the lowest bidder, but they will look at the other qualifications. But still, it's the same, unless you really require a warranty, a bond. So if the road is washed away, then the contractor, if he doesn't redo the work, his house will be forfeited by the GSIS. So we have to add more safeguards because the existing safeguards do not work.
Yeah, so there should be some sort of collateral, there should be some sort of insurance or guarantee in that sense. Ang concern ko lang, Justice Carpio, pag ginawa natin yan, biglang maraming contractor yung nasa Abu Dhabi. Baka pipila sila kay Harry. Baka lahat ng mga pogo, contractor, biglang lang haba ng pila dyan na biglang hindi nagpapakita. Justice Carpio. No, actually, this is a serious issue, no? So much money has been spent, so much kapalpakan. Now, obviously, maybe I'm sure they'll try to play games by saying, oh, etong baha na to ay once in a century, so hindi ito cover, force majeure. I know there'll be a lot of mumbo jumbo. That's why we need the fine print, no? To get it right. But let's be honest, Justice, it looks like, unfortunately, a lot of politicians there have no interest in these contractors having their skin in the game because I think people can connect the dots, right? It's really it's a mafia business, right? Justice, it looks like a mafia operation essentially.
Yeah, and for me, the way I look at it, this is the reason why we are lagging behind in infrastructure in ASEAN. Because while when they build their roads and bridges and skyways, those roads, bridges, and skyways remain. They're stable. I mean, they don't get washed away. But we we waste it because the roads are washed away, and so we have to spend money again to rebuild the bridge or the road. So
Or yung magandang road sinisira, ulitin nila. I mean,
reblocking, that's the
yeah,
new
and that's the worst, right? Ang ganda ng asphalt, yung black asphalt na pang racing, gagawin simento the next year. That's the most ridiculous thing.
yeah, they call that reblocking, and it looks like they like it because when you do reblocking, uh, you spend less because you use the crushed cement as your base, and you just put
Right.
an overlay. So I mean, it's like the circumferential road in Lanao Lake. I mean, uh, it took a long, long time before it could be finished after several budgets. No,
It's a
so
scam. I
I think
mean, budol. Yeah,
we 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 will be left behind in infrastructure. So if you go to other ASEAN countries, you just
yeah,
envy
get
their
mga
highways, their
yeah, yeah,
bridges, their
Thailand.
airports, while ours get dilapidated.
Or once we get nice airports, sobrang mahal. Sobrang dami tax na. Yung naiyawan na nga di pa nga pinaganda. Umakyat lahat ng presyo. Yung airport tax, yung parking fee. Um, yeah, it's budul after budul after budul. And I think this is talagang, ito talagang isa sa ating mga dilemmas. But just as I want to ask also, was this year's budget, which was what? I mean, like 10% higher than projected. Was that a lot of that about elections? Because the excuse, well, the explanation I hear is kailangan natin yan to boost our economic growth dahil our GDP growth rates were quite below target sa first and second quarter, di ba? So the explanation, official explanation is we need to pump prime the economy. Well, ano pang pina-pump prime natin dito, Justice?
Well, normally public works will is a good pump priming activity, but if the funds are used properly, I mean, but if the leakage is 70%, then you're just you're falling behind because you have to pay for this. Remember, about 60% of our budget come from borrowed money, and that means if you utilize only 30% of what you borrow, but you have to pay 100% plus interest,
Plus
you will
interest,
fall
yeah.
behind.
Jesus Christ, yeah, exactly. It's not good at all. Um, can something be done about this, Justice? Kasi matagal na itong issue na ito Pork barrel, ay itong mga skandalo na ito. But for some reason, things are not fundamentally changing, Justice. Nagkakaroon ba
Well,
tayo ng kilusan? I mean, are we seeing convergence of forces to get things together? I mean,
my suggestion is that all contractors must give a warranty, and the warranty must be backed up by hard collateral. So, in other words, if the if the project is a failure, then they lose their shirt. If the road turns out to be of bad material, they use very thin cement, and so the rain just wash it away when the rains come. Then they will lose their shirt, and then that will now, because nobody would want to be in that situation. So they would now start to make it sure that the roads are well built. No, but
well,
right now
hmm.
they just disappear, and there's no penalty for them.
Ang thing ko kasi is just this is anecdotal, but I think trusted enough. There are contractors who tell us that the reason why they have to use substandard quality is because sa daming mga kaltas, including unofficial kaltas and commissions right and left, sobrang konti na lang natitira. Like at then like baka 20% na lang
Yeah,
natitira. Right? So
that
like squeeze din yung mga contractors, kawawa din daw sila.
yeah, that's the situation. But the contractor should be held accountable for that. In other words, we have to make sure that they can make that excuse. So if their hard collateral are put at stake as a warranty, then they will tell whoever is asking money from them, I cannot do it. Sorry, because all my hard-earned assets will be forfeited, will be foreclosed, and so nobody will accept, because before you can get the contract, you must submit a hard collateral to back up your warranty. So then that will start uh, the new contractors will come in who will not play games with the the, the politicians or the DPWH people.
And maybe they will have an incentive to booking if they're being pressed in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah.
So you might create a new sets of incentives and dynamic. Now, just I want to go to the ombudsman issue because soon we're supposed to have a new ombudsman, and a big part of ombudsman is to hold accountable abusive politicians. But before going there, I want to focus on the PhilHealth issue. I'm not seeing as much political backlash from millions of people who could be directly affected by PhilHealth. The mostly I can see is like people like you, PhilHealth professionals, activists, among other things. Uh, but how do you think we can get more people on board? Like how can we remind people na Diyos ko, ito yung kinabukasan ng lahat, diba? This is our healthcare system for heaven's sake, right? Everyone will need it.
Well, we just have to keep on explaining what's happening, Richard, because uh, this is not an easy thing to understand. So we will just have to really explain some more. And I think we're gaining ground. Uh, the people are talking about it already, uh, and we just have to keep on going on to go out and explain what's happening.
And the Supreme Court can come in eventually and correct this?
Yeah, that's the culmination of our work because if the Supreme Court says that the uh, Congress uh, cannot authorize the Secretary of Finance to transfer funds of PhilHealth because there are special funds. These funds can be used only for PhilHealth purposes to achieve the purposes of PhilHealth. Then we've set things straight already. They will not dip their fingers into the PhilHealth funds anymore.
And
So
and
we're waiting
and the
really. The
zero
solution
budget will
here,
be reversed. And can it be reversed? Is there a precedence for that?
well, the Supreme Court will say it's unconstitutional if they think that there's really a violation, and therefore the funds that are still there will have to be returned, and the funds that were spent, if they were spent uh, irregularly, the people who responsible for spending them regularly could be liable.
And when are we expecting the Supreme Court? I mean, you were saying January, right? But there's a first
Well, there will be oral arguments this February.
February. Oof. Elections na yun. Oh, wow. Interesting times. Oh, wow. I'm sure many will follow that Supreme Court, especially those who want to bash the government or have a reason in this. I want to ask another question on this issue, Justice, before we go to the Ombudsman issue. Um, how do we make sure na hindi sinasakyan ng mga opportunist elements? I mean, itago natin sa mga pangalan na DDS itong issue na ito because these are legitimate questions we're raising about the fiscal practices of the BBM administration, but clearly pinagpipiyastahan ng mga Piatos and Mary Grace and those kinds of people, right? Which is obviously a perfect distraction for them, but also a way for them to claw their way back to the hearts and minds of people ahead of the elections.
Yes, I can see, and I've expected this that the uh, those who are at the receiving end of the investigation of the Quadcom and of the Senate will use the PhilHealth issue against the administration, and it's happening. And that's very natural, and this will also help explain to the people what's happening. But of course, we know where this is coming from, no? But that's part of the political debate now.
Yeah, hindi rin maiwasan. But I'm just saying we have to be very careful kasi yun nga, nakikita ko sinasakyan talaga itong issue na to. Halos itong the whole confidential fund issue is now being pushed to the sideline because now the focus, essentially narinig ko sa camp na yan, kami millions lang eh. Itong pinag-usapan, billions ngayon. And then of course, I want to say, oh, billions din yung Farmali, billions din yung mga skandalo during Dicong's time. But unfortunately, that's how things work in our politics, no? You always go, what about this, what about that? So I just hope that people are careful. Now, as much as we have to hold BBM accountable, let's not also lose sight of the other important issues that we have to deal with, including all of the exposés we have been having. Now, Justice, I want to ask you about the ombudsman because mahirap magsalita, but let's just say Conchita Morales is one of the few ombudsman or ombudswomen that like of course she's my fellow Ilocano, you're also related, Um let's just say my Keisha, I'll just put it that way, right? Um for the purpose of our audience, how is an ombudsman selected for that matter? Um, to what degree is an ombudsman susceptible to political influence if not necessarily a person of highest integrity? Although hindi ko sinasabi hindi yun ang kaso. And to what degree do we need to get the ombudsman issue right in the coming months or next year as we look at the transition in the ombudsman office? Ano bang trabaho ng ombudsman office? Bakit kailangan maayos yung ombudsman office in short?
Well, the ombudsman is actually the uh, guardian uh, of the funds of the government, the ultimate guardian before the Supreme Court, uh, and the that's the office that will go after graft and corruption. that will stop graft and corruption in government. Basically, that's it, to stop graft and corruption in government. And uh, the ombudsman will be nominated by the Judicial and Bar Council, and then
But who nominates the Judicial and Bar Council? How are they selected?
well, the Judicial Bar Council is composed of one, the Chief Justice as the presiding officer, one representative from Congress, one representative from the one representative from Congress appointed by Congress, one representative from the IBP appointed by the president, one representative from the retired justices appointed by the president, and one at large appointed also by the president. So
I hear a lot of appointed by the president.
yes, that's it. Uh, so my proposal really is that the if ever we have to amend our constitution, that the members of the Judicial and Bar Council should be appointed one third, one third, one third by the executive, the judiciary, and by the legislative.
Ano ba yung system sa Sweden? Do you happen to know? Because that's where it came from, right? This whole ombudsman office is a
Yeah,
Scandinavian
that's a concept
extension.
in Sweden. In other words, he will see to it that graft and corruption is stopped in government.
And speaking of graft and corruption, I mean, I heard some people are saying, like for instance, if a politician weaponizes cyber libel, etc., to silence his rivals or opponents, could that be a form of abuse of power? Could that be within the purview of the ombudsman office?
Well, that will more likely be under the regular courts.
Hmm. So ano yung mga pasok sa graft and corruption?
Well,
Aside from
the
like appropriate.
prosecution of crimes under the anti-graft laws, the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, the uh, Code of Conduct for Government Employees, and uh, other provisions of the revised penal code, like malversation involving public officials.
Justice, obviously, I don't know if you have seen, I recommended you as the next ombudsman. Is that something you may be interested in? If not, who are the other people you would, again, of course, you don't want to preempt, we have to respect the process, whatever. But, sino bang pwede mga matino-tino dyan na medyo Conchita Morales level, if not you, Justice Carpio?
Well,
We recommended you. It's like,
I haven't given it a thought yet, but definitely I'm out because I'm 75 and I mean, you need a younger guy there. It's a very taxing job.
there's always stem cell, but I mean, there's always Enrile who's like legal advisor at 100. But thank you, Justice Carpio, for politely rejecting our proposal. Pero may mga ibang tao, I mean, I know you don't want to put yourself on the spot, but may mga naisip ka ng dalawang tatlong tao na may good chance. Maybe you don't have to name them, but do you think there's a chance that we might get a good ombudsman next? Wala akong sinasabi sa current one. I'm just saying on the next one.
We should try to get a very good ombudsman because that's a key office in stopping graft and corruption now, and that's one of our more important issues now. So
Lawyer ba dapat? Dapat ba lawyer by profession?
uh, yeah,
Is it
well,
one?
yes, he must be a lawyer.
Because someone was saying Heidi Mendoza. I'm not sure. I mean, Heidi Mendoza is more economics background. But anyway,
He's an accountant.
yeah, she's an accountant, right? Exactly. She's a numbers person. Um, Justice, now let's transition naman dito um, sa issue ng budget ng Department of National Defense, right? One of the things we saw is a 30% slash dun sa proposed budget for AFP modernization from 50 billion down to 35 billion. There was some clownery in Senate, the Bato del Rosa types making whatever interventions there. Are you worried with the just 35 billion? That's not even 700, $600 million. Considering what we're facing right now in the West Philippine Sea, what is your read on the DND front?
Yes, I'm very worried that we're not giving the importance that it deserves. We are defending our sovereignty, and that's our territory. Our islands in in the Calayan Island Group and Scarborough Shoal, and without territory, you do not have a state. I mean, that's the primary duty of a state to defend its territory and maritime zones, and that's in the Constitution. So you cannot downgrade uh, that problem and just forget about it. I think we should uh, we should divert more resources in strengthening our defense, both the Coast Guard and the Navy, and otherwise we will lose our maritime zones and island territories in the West Philippine Sea.
Yun nga eh. I mean, if we're looking at acquisition of, HIMARS or acquisition of Typhoon systems or fighter jets, I mean, $600 million is not really much. I mean, again, can we remind our people, kasi parati ko narinig Justice Carpio, is like, bakit tayo gumagastos? Magpakabait lang naman tayo sa China or US. Let's just be nice and diplomatic. Sayang yung pera natin. Itong 700 million pwede natin lagay sa eskwela, yung mga ganun. Can we have a realistic wake-up call dun sa mga kaibigan natin? What are we facing here today from China and some of the other questionable characters in the region? If we don't spend enough on our own, pwede ba tayo umasa lang sa just being nice, being meek, as Digong said, towards China, or just umasa lang tayo sa US? Ano ba yan?
Well, sabi ni Digong, let's ask mercy from President Xi. Uh, but President Xi is determined to make the 10 dash line the national boundary. And that means we will lose Calayan Island Group, we will lose Scarborough Shoal, and 80% of our exclusive economic zone. If you show weakness to China, the more China will bully you. China only understands military might. And right now, they look at us uh, as a weakling. That's why they treat
Over.
us that way. So if we kneel down and ask for mercy, the more we'll be treated like a weakling.
You have to get the respect grudgingly, even, right? That's how it works with bullies, right? I mean, there's no other way. Um, Well, I mean, maybe Digong will get mercy once ICC comes for him when he goes to Shanghai or Xiamen or wherever in China he loves to stay. Um, uh, but just as going back again dito sa West Philippine Sea issue, what do you think we got right in 2024? You think the Transparency Initiative did enough in terms of laying down the foundation? Obviously, it's not the silver bullet. But was it enough, for instance, ako kasi argument ko is it at least unified the country on a singular narrative of what is our national interest because panon ni Digong, postmodern eh. Parang
Mm.
multiverse eh. Parang yung iba, hindi, doon na tayo sa China. May point naman sila eh. Parang, what the heck is going on here, right? Parang, kine-question pa yung position ng Pilipinas in favor of China. Like, at least you have been able to sideline some of those clowns, no? And some of those apparatchiks of China. But nevertheless, obviously, medyo kapalmoks din yung kalaban natin. Wala rin silang pake. They keep on pushing the envelope. So what did we get right and what are the next steps that we have to accordingly for
Well,
2025?
yeah. Well, we have actually increased uh, we have we have received more support now from the international community. Uh, we have just ratified our reciprocal access agreement with Japan, and I think they will also ratify on their end. And we have France and UK willing to do uh, uh, visiting forces agreement with us. So I think we've got that right. I mean, we should continue to expand our security relationship with like-minded states. That's very important because, Richard, uh, we may have a U.S. president who will say, "Oh, China is not doing anything wrong if it invades the West Philippine Sea." When I heard Trump say that you cannot blame Russia for invading Ukraine, I could hear him say you cannot blame China for invading the Calayan Island Group. So we have to have security arrangements with more countries, and we should strengthen our external defense, because at the end of the day, uh, we have to factor in the worst case scenario. If the US becomes isolationist and we have to defend our country on our own, and with some states who might still want to help us. So uh, it's like uh, it's like Vietnam. They don't have a military alliance with any country, so they really strengthen their self-defense posture now. They have 6 kilo class submarines. They're buying BrahMos missiles now from India. They have bought a lot of missiles from Israel, so they have diversified their sources of procurement of arms, and that's what we should do. I mean, we cannot forever rely on a security partner, because the sentiment of the people of our security partner might change.
Person is Donald Trump, right? Medyo mahirap umasa. I mean, it would be foolish for you, right? To bet your future on the mercy of China or mercy of Trump, for that matter, right? Or reliability of Trump, right? I think it would be foolish. Kaya nga, I was quite surprised by the seeming lack of appreciation of the defense and strategic dilemma we face right now. Justice, what are the things that Philippines should do now, given this background of uncertainty with Trump, this background of China becoming more aggressive with Taiwan, especially? Should we be more involved on the Taiwan issue? Do you think we should allow more American weapon systems deployment there near Taiwan? Should we ask more from America in exchange for that? What are we looking at here?
Well, we should strengthen our uh, missile defense. We have the BrahMos. We should acquire more, and we should acquire the Typhoon. And because we have to have our own uh, ant- uh, anti-access area denial capability. We adapt what the Chinese adopted when they were weaker than the Americans in the South China Sea. They use their missiles to target the ships, and that's what we should do. We should use the missiles to 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 target Chinese warships that encroach on our exclusive economic zone, and that will deter China. In the case of the Americans, because of the Chinese anti-ship missiles, they have to pull out most of the time out of the South China Sea, farther in beyond this first island chain. No, so uh, we can adopt that policy, because ultimately that is our the only defense that we can have if uh, if we become if the U.S. will not honor its obligation to us, or if the American sentiment will change.
Exactly. This is what I say to some of our leftist friends. They say, "Oh, let's be Vietnam." It's like, yeah, except they spend like hundreds of billions of dollars ahead of us in terms of their military capabilities, right? They have a mobilized military. They have a history of fighting. I mean, again, like, there's just so much naivete out there that really makes you scratch your head. Why some people even dare to talk about this issue? I call it sloganeering. Madaling pakinggan sa tweet, pero walang sense when you look at the hard realities on the ground. In as much as I want to make sure also we don't go foolishly into America's camp at the expense of our national interest. Now, Justice, for the last part of our discussion today and for this year, although God willing, I look forward to more discussions in person. Didisturbohin ka namin ulit, Justice Carpio. With Ronald, with Admiral, let's bring in more, maybe not Ronald anymore. Baka mapahamak ka rin, Justice Carpio. We'll bring mga more PC people. Si Admiral siguro, Admiral. Um, we ended yung isang pre-Christmas talk natin with Ronald on this fear na if we don't get things right now, the call for extra constitutional, extra legal, rev gov, crackpot stuff will increase. And it sounds something like parang yeah, I mean, ganun talaga, but it's like you keep on seeing more and more news about agitations, news about former military generals making noise again, news about did PMA Association invite Digong to give a speech to them or something like that? Like, what's going on? Is there like a smoke here that we have to pay attention to in a sense that there could be fire? What is your read there, Justice Carpio, without spilling beans?
Well, there are two main uh, two main approaches now, two schools of thought now. One school of thought to which I belong is that we have to, because they want reform in our society, everybody, both sides. No, uh, we must eradicate or minimize corruption. Second, that's the first. Second is we have to enact already the anti-political dynasty law. And third, they want electoral reforms. So ANIM has identified these three as the biggest problems of the country. Okay, let's assume that we agree with that. But there are two approaches. One, this can be done under the present constitution. We will uh, ask the Supreme Court to uh, to uh, strike down certain acts that violate the constitution. And the other one, the other school of thought is saying that the it's useless to rely on Congress, the executive, or the Supreme Court. We can only achieve these objectives through a revolutionary government. So these are the two options that eventually our people will face. So I'm on the side of, I think we can still uh, institute reforms in accordance with the Constitution. But I don't know if this is now a race. If the first group saying that we can reform the system from within can do it fast, then the other group for the RevGov will lose their reason for existence because the objectives have been achieved. So on the corruption side, the examples are PhilHealth. If the Supreme Court will decide in our favor on PhilHealth, you have also the confidential fund issue because it's spreading to local governments. They want every mayor wants his own confidential fund. So we have to stop it through the legal process. Hopefully, we succeed. But if we don't succeed, then the RevGov will gain ground. That's the way I look at it.
Gov or even more aggressive version of Duterte, no? Or a combination of Duterte and some sort of military agitation and all of that. Obviously, my reading so far is that the men in uniform are still professional by and large. But at the same time, I also agree, Justice, that we might reach a deadlock soon. No, I mean, you may not have agreed with my deadlock argument on the fiscal malpractices issue, but I don't know, Justice, kasi you wonder, I mean, for how long will millions of Filipino people, right, put up with this, right? Na paulit-ulit na dismaya sila, 'di ba? Every 6 years at least, right? And the president comes in, promises heaven, golden eras, 6 months this, 6 months that, daan matuwid, uh, the strong republic, ganyan, and what we see is this persistent inequality, poverty, and sometimes you wonder. I mean, yeah, people have already made two at least protest votes, right? One is BBM. That's the biggest middle finger you can give to ETSA regime, right? Like we'll bring back the Marcoses, and previous to that was Duterte, which is kind of another middle finger to the whole democracy, constitutional order thing. But you're right. At some point, they might go and say, you know what, screw this all. Let's just burn down the house, right? And let's go for some. Why do you think that's a dangerous path? Why, I know parang for two of us because we are constitutionally minded
Well,
people. But for those who are not constitutionally oriented, Justice, why is that not sensible? Because the status quo is not working for many people, if not most of our
yeah.
people.
If we have a RevGov, the EU, the European countries, US, Canada, and all the rest, Australia, will not support the RevGov. I mean, uh, they will demand the return of democracy, and foreign investors will avoid us. So the economy will suffer, and and no foreign investors. They will withhold the financial support to the Philippines in terms of loans and grants. So we'll have a big problem. And the and of course, RevGov uh, will spawn a lot of military groups that will oppose it. You have the NPA, the MILF. So it will be a problem, a big problem. And
It will open a can of
RevGov,
worms. It will open up a can of worms.
yes, you will open up a can of worms, and there will be resistance from civil society. So it's
And correspondingly a crackdown. I mean,
yeah, there will be a
they're not
crackdown,
gonna
a
sit back. They're gonna
resistance.
put you in jail.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we'll have a big problem. So I think we should avoid that path. That's why I hope that the what we're doing now to institute these reforms that have been identified by everybody, we agree that these reforms should be given priority already
Ako, to
because there's
yeah, to just preempt some arguments, because people will say, "Oh, what about Thailand?" Right? Ang dami nilang kudeta. It's still richer country than us, more progressive, more dynamic. But the reality is that nakailan kuna, hindi pa ni stable yung system nila, di ba? It looks like the RevGov is not working too. And actually, Thailand lost a lot of its economic potential. Their GDP per capita has essentially stagnated over the past few years. They could have been twice richer, even richer probably than Malaysia at this point if they got their act together. No, kasi the reason I'm saying that is because people will say, "Oh, bakit yung Thailand parating kudeta, parating junta? Maganda naman yung kalagayan sa Thailand."
well, Thailand is lucky because it's along the route of tourists from Europe. They have maybe 4 or 5 times more tourists than us, or even more. So they have a, a big source of foreign exchange, and they have they're self-sufficient in food. They export a lot of rice. Their farmers are very productive. So it's and you have the Mekong River providing free irrigation to them. So it's a different landscape. No?
So you're
So
saying the
we are
Philippines
a
should be more like
archipelago of islands.
should be
So
more like Cuba. We were like
yeah, we are more
isolated,
like more
impoverished.
Cuba. Yeah.
Exactly. Like
So
even I mean, Cuba is nice and all, but I'm just saying, like, may fiesta, dancing, cha-cha, salsa, pero walang pera, di ba? Yeah, I mean, I'm just spelling this out, Justice, because I'm thankful that you raised that issue. Kasi itong issue, narinig mo lang pagkausap mo yung mga komunista, Marxista,
mm,
gano'n. Pero sabi ko, for someone like you, who's like a man of the system, to say, hey, guys, we have to get our act together. Otherwise, papunta talaga tayo sa exciting part. I appreciate that, Justice Carpio. I appreciate that because how many times in my classes, and I've been teaching at the elite universities in the country, Ateneo, LaSalle, UP, you hear some students say once in a while, Sir, huwag na yung mga ano na yan. Di ba? Yung parang ubusin na. Di ba? So that tells you, there is that kind of, let's just call it political unconscious, right? Kung saan, some of our people are saying maybe we just have to reset the deck and reboot it. And that's very important. Now, having said that, Justice, now, at the same time, we have to admit things have not been working, right? I mean, formally
y-
we have separation of powers. Formally, we have the outer shells of a liberal democracy, if not a constitutional democracy, but it's very hollow, right? So how do we fight the good fight, and how do we really make the Philippines a real constitutional democracy?
well, it depends on the citizens. I mean, we have to protect our rights. It's there in the Constitution. How to make that how to operationalize that depends on us. That's why we have to assert our rights. Otherwise, if you don't assert your rights, you lose your rights. And that's true everywhere. So that's why what we're trying is asserting all our freedoms, all our rights and privileges under the Constitution. We're saying that Congress cannot just take out the money of PhilHealth. We're saying that you cannot have confidential funds. There is no law. And we're saying that you cannot increase the budget that was proposed by the president because you want more pork, you cannot do that. So we just have to be vigilant. It depends really on the citizenry to make the constitution work. Because unfortunately, we have a, a political dynasties, and they these inherently they will not want the constitution to work, because for the constitution to work, there must be an anti-political dynasty law. That's the very essence uh, of their existence, is to be a political dynasty, and the constitution says there must be an anti-political dynasty law. That means that's a threat to their existence, so they will not follow that.
So what are the big things that we have to get through in the next year or so, or in the short to medium run, before the temptation of the RevGov or the extra constitutional kind of like the violent fascistic approach gains sufficiently dangerous traction, Justice? I mean, real talk na
Well,
tayo na ngayon. I mean, this is real talk. This is as real talk as we can get. Yeah.
well, we have to do something about the corruption in government, in public works, because they always mention public works. So uh, I was thinking that we will require uh, a warranty from all contractors. So if they don't build the road correctly or the bridge correctly, they lose their shirt. I mean, we have to do that. And if they lose their shirt, they will not agree anymore to any cut by other people, because it means the end of their business. Secondly, uh, well, we have to end this issue of confidential funds, because this is a new kind of a new source of strength of political dynasties, if they can use confidential funds to perpetuate themselves in office. So that will end also the stranglehold of the political dynasties. We have to uh, abolish these confidential funds, because it's just the money of the people that will get them elected, no? And the of course, the political dynasty. We just have to ask the Supreme Court to order now the Congress to pass the political dynasty law. And if Congress doesn't want, the people will now say, okay, we will not elect you anymore because you're not passing the political dynasty law. So that will be a threat to them.
How can we make our friends in Forbes and Das Marinas and in their yachts in Mediterranean realize that maybe they have to get their act together? Because my fear with a lot of these conyos is that they have three, four other passports anyway. Parang their point is, at the end of the day, I still, I'll just move out of the Philippines. Bahala kayo dyan, right? I mean, I don't want to name names. I've met a number of these people who have deep roots in the country. Kind of, yeah. I mean, the oligarchs and all of that, Konya and all of that, and they can speak two, three other languages, Spanish, French, whatever, and sometimes I wonder, like, if these people don't get their act together and do something significant and just leave it to these crocodiles in the legislatures and governments and all of that, at some point the whole thing is gonna come crashing down. I mean, we're gonna see essentially the whole Simon el filibusterismo temptation here, right?
Yeah, there will be a
Rizal
day
Day
of
na rin,
reckoning.
Justice. To, sorry, I mean, I'm bringing this up because it's also Rizal Day, right? Rizal
Yeah,
was grappling with that na parang this system is so rotten. There's so many there's so many obstacles to positive transformation. Baka magkaroon tayo ng Simon kind of figure at some point.
yeah, and there's agitation already going on, as I said, in the among retired military officials. I mean, they came out with their manifesto already, and it's very clear. They want to address corruption. They want to address the electoral reforms and the political dynasties. I mean, they selected these three. And I think these are the issues that we have to face today.
Now, Justice, the challenge I have is this. Sabi nila, ang problema ng mga political activists or people who advocate for change is that If they do not emphasize how bad things are, people will be complacent. If they overemphasize how bad things are, people will feel helpless, right? So how can we get that Goldilocks kung saan? Parang kape yan, di ba? Justice, you're a coffee man. Both of us, we love coffee, right? How can we get that just good enough level of coffee that gives you the energy but not the palpitation and the ADHD later on, right? Just the amount of sugar, just the amount of caffeine combination, right? How do we get that, Justice?
Well, we just have to play it by ear. Uh, we keep on talking this way and wait for the uh, comments of people, their reaction. But this will filter down. I mean, we have two options really. Uh, the to to tame these evils of corruption, political dynasty, and electoral problems. So uh, at least we have identified the problems. No? And there's one group saying this is how we will do it through RevGov. We have another group saying no, we can reform the system from within. So, and we're throwing it to the decision makers. We've submitted it to the Supreme Court. Now, if they decide correctly, we may avoid the RevGov. That's where we are now.
Uh, on that very sobering note, Justice, I really appreciate this discussion. Because I think we have to have this real talk with people, no? Na talagang kung hindi natin ayusin ito, we're going down a very dangerous path. For all the jokes you make and a lot of that. Baka naman, Justice Carpio, after all, tama si Harry, no? Maybe all of us should go to Abu Dhabi or do. Maybe he saw the direction of the wind. Like, maybe we should have our own, Zoom with Harry. Ano bang mga options natin dyan, Justice Carpio? Thank you so much, Justice. Merry Christmas to your family and loved ones. And of course, advance Happy New Year. Mabuhay po kayo, Justice Carpio. Batang-bata ka pa. And just in case naging ombudsman ka, please don't turn it down. We need you there. And then let's see what we can do in 2028 with Ronald and all. Mag-conspire pa tayo
Okay.
ng mga next moves natin. Thank you so much, Justice. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up the final episode together for the year
Well, wala
2020?
na. We except to wish everybody uh, Merry Christmas and uh, prosperous New Year. Hopefully, we will go through this hole, and I think we will just have to keep on doing what we think is best for our country.
Maraming salamat, Justice Carpio. Mabuhay ka. And in the spirit of Rizal, we had to discuss that Simon moment. I think that was quite sobering, and I'm glad that constitutionalists like you also mentioned that. Salamat, Justice, and send my regards to your lovely family.
Okay,
Oh,
Richard.
God bless.